And so, I mean, how do you prepare for all of this? If he imagines that you're going to have a serious debate about policy, I think he's going to be disappointed. And this is unfortunately, encapsulates what it is like to run against Donald Trump. Donald Trump will just throw things against the wall. He will lie. He will make facts up, and he will try. I think his main strategy is just going to be to rattle Joe Biden. So part of the problem is that we have a campaign for the presidency with the stakes so high. There is so much on the table, and yet what we're going to have is we're going to have a show. And we're going to have a show that features a reality TV star who is going to put on a thoroughly deplorable performance. So it's hard to prepare for something this far outside the norm. Any of us that pretend that somehow this is a normal debate, I think miss the entire point of what is about to be inflicted upon the country. So I have a somewhat contrarian take to this. I'm not looking forward to this debate. I don't think America is going to come out smarter. I don't think that we're going to come out more informed out of this debate. And the day afterwards, we're just going to be evaluating the performance of these two men and how thoroughly awful Donald Trump's behavior was.
Misha, let's talk about specific as well, because this week President Biden unveiled new executive actions on immigration. These actions aim to shield around 500,000 undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens from deportation, allows DACA recipients to get work visas quicker. Politico reports the Biden campaign to use this as a way to show a contrast between Biden and Trump's extreme immigration agenda at the debate. Amisha, how big of an issue do you think this is going to be in the debate and going forward through November?
Donald Trump is going to use this, and we've already seen the Republican Party use it as fire to basically instigate that the Democrats are essentially mining new voters, that they are doing this so that they can get undocumented individuals to actually vote in this election cycle. We know that that's absolutely untrue, but it's an attack that we've seen time and time again. For Joe Biden, this is huge. This is huge because when we think about DACA families, those who have been here for quite some time at this point, many of which who've already graduated from college, know very little or absolutely nothing about the lifestyle of which the country they originally came from, because they were so young when they came here at no fault of their own. I think that this is a very, very smart policy. I think that it's something that is long overdue. We all knew that DACA was basically hanging on the fringe. Ensuring that those individuals have a pathway that they can actually maintain employment is extremely important. We're looking at individuals who, by no fault of their own, are in this country, but have also proven themselves to be very strong, not only in terms of academics, but also in terms of their work ethic. And they just want a chance at a life in America. And quite frankly, they know no life anyplace else. So I think that this is extremely important. And it is in contrast with some of the insane and anti-humane policies that we've seen come out of the Republican side of the aisle that ironically are for somebody who claims to be on the Christian right, that are neither Christian nor are they supportive of humanity in general. They do not care about undocumented migrants. They do not care about those who have been in this country and have done absolutely nothing wrong. And I think that at this point, what we're seeing is not only humanitarianism on front stage, but we're also seeing a president who is moving towards immigration reform, who needs Congress to come along with him, but who has not abandoned these individuals. And that's very important.
And Charlie, this is going to be a two-person debate now that RFK Jr. is not qualified. How damaging is this for RFK's campaign, and how damaging is it for the others two? How positive is it for those other two candidates that he's not going to be there?
Well, obviously, it is not good for RFK, and I think that the fact that he was not able to meet the benchmarks is an indication that RFK Jr. is going to be on a trajectory very similar to other third-party candidates. We have a long tradition of third-party candidates polling very, very well and then fading toward the end. That's not always the case. It wasn't the case with Ross Perot back in 1992. But RFK still poses a threat, I think, to both of the candidates, particularly because there are so many voters who are the so-called double haters, who are disillusioned with the choice and are looking for some sort of an off-ramp, and they may vote for RFK Jr. So I think think, one of the things that has to happen between now and November is people need to be informed who and what RFK Jr. is, that he's not just your run-of-the-mill Kennedy, that here is somebody who has spent much of his life engaging in bizarre conspiracy theories, just really outside the far outside the mainstream. So he's going to be a factor in this campaign, and I think we can't ignore that.